begin the current Daf, Mesech Beitzah Daf Lamed Gimel, begin on the second line down with Daf the Yomim. We continue to explain the halacha of our previous Mishnah regarding what is considered something that's usable in the context of muktzah and what's not. This corresponds because of today's Daf. Something we're going to discuss in today's Daf are actions and activities that are forbidden on Yom Tov and the permissible ways to perform them. The machlekes of whether muktzah and noilid are forbidden on Yom Tov. Some of the key terms of the concepts are tikkun mana, as we've been speaking about in these dafim regarding making something into a vessel, which is forbidden because of makav patish. Noilid is the introducing a new entity that wasn't around from before Yom Tov. So we learned in the Mishnah that we said ve'ein semchen esagdeira with the second line down at the top of the Yomim. We said that you cannot support the pot with a log of wood, and the words of the Mishnah were v'chein bedelis, and so to a door. So which the Gemara assumes what that means to say is that you can't support a pot with a log of wood, which we explained already in the Mishnah because that the log is meant for fueling a fire. It's muktzah for any other utilities. You can't use it to support a pot. And it sounds like that you also can't use a door to support a pot. So the Gemara says, or you entertain to say who's going to support a pot with a door, but the door is going to break. And the Emir says the Gemara, no, the words are v'chein hadelis. And also a door, you cannot support the door with the log of wood. So again, it's the same idea. Just like you say, you can't support the pot with a log. You cannot support a door with a log. Continue on this halacha explaining.
What's the havimina?
Yeah, what's the havimina of?
Pot is like a door.
Oh yeah. Good shiloh. What are you adding on when you're saying a door? Maybe because a door is more common. It's like a doorstop or something. Oh yeah, good question. Turn on in the Beitzah. In semchen esagdeira, the bikas, you cannot support a pot with a log, like we said, and bechinadelas. So to a door, you cannot support with a log of wood. And the reason we've been explaining in the Beitzah explicitly, because wood, a log, is only for fuel. It's not used for a door stopper or for a pot. Rabbi Shimon says it's mutter, like he said in the Mishnah. And the reason for that is, as Rashi explains, because he doesn't hold of quote unquote muktzah. So he doesn't hold it's a problem that, it's only meant for this. No, if you're allowed to use a log, because you're allowed to use it for fuel, you can use it for a door stopper or for, and maybe that's the chiddush. Maybe it's because the other way around, that even Rabbi Shimon would hold it's even mutter. What do they say?
The way he understands is that you're not supposed to support the door with a pot. And on this, the Gemara asks, the pot's going to break.
Wait, that's supposed to support a door with a pot?
Yeah.
With a pot? Who's talking about supporting a door with a pot? I don't know. We'll have to check that out. But Rabbi Shimon says you're allowed to use the log for any utility because again he doesn't hold the muktzah, and since you could use it, it's okay. Now the Mishnah said the iman higgins of him b'makal b'yom tov. Now go ahead and lead an animal with a stick on Yom Tov. Rabbi Shimon Mati says no. It says it's going to be permitted. Says the Gemara, lamer Rabbi Shimon kavu really. Sounds like he's like his father. Rabbi Shimon. We just quoted Rabbi Shimon in the Bryce who says that the halacha of a Mishnah that says I'll use a log of wood for some other purposes because it's muktzah. Rabbi Shimon says mutter. Rabbi Shimon who says you could use the stick, which again the stick is also basically used only for fuel. He holds you allowed to use it because like his father, the lasle muktzah. Says no, not necessarily. But Rabbi Shimon mind, I can tell you that Rabbi Shimon actually would not disagree with it because this machlekes regarding the stick for the animal is not regarding muktzah as we thought initially, as we explained in the Mishnah. And even Rabbi Shimon would agree to the time that it's going to be us to use the stick to lead the animal because not because of muktzah. It's mishum de merzi commanda ozgal lechinka. It looks like that you're going and you're leading the animal from place to place because you need to take it for a long distance. Like for example, because you want to go sell it in the marketplace. Which the word chinga means a machal, means like a circle. The reason is because medrait tzacharim. That's what it says. What does it mean medrait tzacharim? Where everyone's going around in circles in the shuk, in the marketplace. So therefore, it's called the chinga. But again, that's the reason why you not lead the animal with a stick, not because of muktzah of the stick, because it looks like you're taking him to the marketplace, which obviously not do mekach on Yom Tov. That's the reason why it's us.
What about mechamer?
Or leading the animal.
You're leading the animal.
Mm-hmm. If you're leading the animal.
Only if there's a massa.
Oh.
Yeah,
If it's carrying something, if it's right, it would be without something. So again, so it's not a raya that Reb Eliezer is like his father, because his father might actually said it's usher, because again the machlek is not regarding muktzah, it's actually regarding something else. It's actually regarding it just looks like as if you're taking an animal to the shuk. Now, also related to this idea about wood on Yom Tov, so the Gemara brings chizra, which is a branch of a tree that's very pointy, like a thorn, and you could use it if you want to roast meat, like a spit, to roast it on. So this chizra is Reb Nachman Asr. He says you're not use it on Yom Tov because it's muktzah from moving, because you didn't make it as a kli from before Yom Tov, so you can't use it for roasting. You didn't designate it's going to be a spit. Rav Shloimy says no, it's permitted. That's their machlekes.
You made the point on Shabbos? On Yom?
No, meaning it is. It's like this picture. It's like this pointy type of a branch, and it's usable for a spit, but you didn't designate it beforehand. So Nachman says also it's a muktzah. Sheish is mutter. Now the Gemara, however, qualifies this machlekes and says, bitter tiva, when it's moist, meaning it's a wet branch, where it wouldn't even be movable, meaning to not be muktzah, even for fuel. Like you're allowed to take a branch if it was detached, not detached, but it's detached, you're allowed to use it for fuel. So if it's moist, that you can be used as fuel. So kulam lepligi says the Gemara. No one's going to disagree to us that it's going to be forbidden because it has no muchan status whatsoever. Ki pligi be aveshta. The whole machlekes is when it's dry wood. So what's the lum? The Gemara says man the asam lach. The one who tells you it's forbidden would tell you you're right. If you want to use it as fuel, you could use it, but it's muktzah to be a spit because it's not designated for that. But Aman Deshorim Malach, the one who says permitted, would tell you mali litzlis. But what's the difference to roast with it, meaning to stick it inside of it, and mali litzlis begachal toy? What's the difference to roast with its coal? You tell me you're allowed to move it to make coals out of it, meaning to heat it up and to throw it in the fire and to roast it that way. So what's the difference if I'm using it as a spit or if I'm using it in the fire itself? Once I'm allowed to move it for roasting it, I'm allowed to use it to put it in as a spit too. That's one version. Now, Ikadam, those say a different version. When it's dry, of course, no one's going to disagree that's permitted because I'm allowed to put it into the fire, so I'm allowed to use it as a spit too. The machlekes actually was when it's wet, a wet spit. Manda also one that says forbidden is because the lechas lasak. You don't have the migui anymore. You don't have that mali this, mali that. You can't use it as fuel. Manda shoyel the one who says permitted would tell you no. Hachazil has a gadol. When you have a really large fire, it'll consume and burn up even a wet piece of wood, and therefore, since it does have utility, so then you could use it as a spit. And the Gemara says halachas halacha is yavesh shari. When it's dry, it is permitted, and retiv to aser when it's wet. It's going to be aser. Now Rashi tells us that this halacha is according to the one who holds that there is halachic status of muktzah, but we hold like Rabbi Shimon that both by the halachas of muktzah and of what's called davashein miskaven, we hold like Rabbi Shimon that that's permitted. We don't hold davashein miskaven as aser primarily, and so too muktzah. And we also hold like Rabbi Yehuda that machshir oichel nefesh, even preparing the utensils for food making, is also permitted. So whether over here by the chizra, by this branch, or whether by the halachas we have in the previous dafs of putting together the barrels or the pots or the bonfire, all those halachas, those amaram that says they were forbidden, they were all tamidim of Rav. And Rav holds like Rabbi Yehuda that muktzah is aser. But Rashi will hold like Rabbi Shimon, and therefore all these halachas wouldn't be aser, they would be permitted. Now, actually related to this, about holding like Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Shimon, the Gemara brings a Darish Rava. As Rashi points out, Rava holds like Rabbi Yehuda, that muktzah is aser. So Rava expounded, he says, Isha le'tikonis l'dira eitzim. A woman should not go into the storage room of where the wood is kept. A woman's not allowed to go in, little man ud, to go ahead and take a piece of wood, to go ahead and take as a poker, which is a type of a stick that's used for an oven. And the reason why it's forbidden is because, again, the wood is only meant for fuel, for firewood. And unless you really designated from before Yom Tov to make it into a poker, that's going to be forbidden. So therefore, you're not go in because it's muktzah for that. Now, ba'ud shenishbar, And regarding if this piece of wood, this poker broke on Yom Tiv, it'd be forbidden to go ahead and use this as fuel on Yom Tiv. Again, this also in the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. The reason for that is Lafisha Masika Mekalim. A Keli is not Muktzah, so you could use it as fuel. But a broken vessel is a new entity. It's Neilid. And therefore, when it's a broken vessel, it's considered as Muktzah, and you can't use it as fuel. So the Gemara asked the obvious question, which we were saying, remember the Rava could have Yehuda Spirlei? This lay Muktzah is that to say the Rava, which obviously is holding Rabbi Yehuda, that holds the Balacha of Muktzah. Rava said to his attendant, Tovali bar Abza, roast for me a young goose, B'shadi mo'e l'shundra, and throw its intestines to the cat, which, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it would be forbidden to move and to give it to the cat, because from before Yom Tiv, the animal was prepared for a human being, and not for this goose, and not for dogs. Now, Rabbi Yehuda holds that if it was not available from before Shabbos, as we said this on the Vav Mabez, it's forbidden. So how you allowed to go ahead and take the intestines and throw it to the cat, but it's muktzah. Like we said, Rabbi Yehuda holds like halfway muktzah. It was only designated for one thing, they can't use it for something else. So how you allowed to throw the intestines to the cat? So the Gemara in the Hosm over there, it's different, because kiva de misruchi, since if you would leave it over for the next day, it would get spoiled, and today he didn't eat it. From yesterday, where he was thinking about it, he was going to throw it to the cat. And again, therefore, it is considered as prepared and designated. And therefore, even according to Yehuda, which who Rabba holds like, we're all be permitted, and therefore he told his attendant to throw it to the cat. Shiur Halacha, the next Mishnah, which continues on this theme about wood, which we're discussing in these Mishnahs, regarding lighting a fire, and regarding as relates to halachas of muktzah. So he says, Noitel Adam Kisa Mishalafanav. A person could take a twig, a splinter, from in front of him, meaning what's in front of him in the house. He could use a lachzis b'shinav to go ahead and take out, like a toothpick, to take out meat that's stuck between his teeth. Now, Rashi points out that this Rabbi Eliezer is saying he could take it from in front of him is not precise, because according to Rabbi Eliezer, you could even take from his courtyard, where, as he says shortly, that whatever's in the courtyard is considered prepared. This halach of the Reisha, the main point he was coming to tell us was that you could even move wood, even not for fuel, as firewood, which the Rabbanan disagree with, as the Gemara brings later on in the Brisa. Why did he say Mishalafanav? Is because the Rabbanan disagree. They hold that even Mishalafanav, you're allowed to use it only for lighting, but not for using as some other use as a toothpick. So again, Rabbi Eliezer himself really would hold you could use it as a toothpick even if it's not right in front of you. We're just saying Lafanav, because even the Rabbanan are going to say it's Aser, even Lafanav, for a toothpick. Umagavev, so too you could gather. These are small pieces of wood and of straw. You could gather them in a chatzar from the courtyard of Madlik and you could light it. Because again, whatever's in the courtyard is prepared, so you could use it as fuel. And Rebbe Lezer is saying you could even use it as some other thing, like using it as a toothpick. The sages, they say, Megavev me shalafanav, you could gather only the big machmer two things. One, it has to be mishalafanav, has to be from the front of the person, and umadlik, and you could only use it as fuel, to light it up, but not from the chatzar. Why not? Because since they're very small and thin, it's very difficult to gather them. So from yesterday, that was not prepared for that. And this also a second point of disagreeing, that you said that you could take the splinter that's in front of you to go ahead and use as a toothpick. We hold that no, even if it's right there in front of you in your house, you're not allowed to take it, only for hadlaka, because the wood and these splinters were only used for hasaka. So again, there's two machlokes. One's regarding, is it only lefanav, or even what's in the chatzar is muchan, and also, is it only for hadlaka, or is it even for, let's say, lachtzas b'shinav? Another halacha is ein meitzin es ha'or. You're not allowed to produce a fire. This is a well-known halacha of Yom Tov that we know because of Mailid, of creating a new entity. You cannot produce a fire, not from wood, not from stone, offer. Meaning we know when you rub stones together as a flint, it makes a fire, and of course by wood. V'leimin offer, and neither from earth, which Rashi says there was this hard earth that when you dig it, it actually produces a flame from where you're digging it. So you can't use it by the earth, and v'leimin ofim, and not from tiles, v'leimin hamayim, not from water, which Rashi says what they would do is that if you put water in a clear glass vessel and you put it in the sun, and the sun is very hot, and the glass can then produce a flame, so then they bring like a very flammable piece of straw, and they touch it by the glass, and it gets fired up, like my son was doing Hanchalamayid with a magnifying glass, put it next to some leaves and make a fire. So that's what it means from the water, meaning but you have the glass which gets very hot and it can produce a fire. So you now produce a fire in whatever way it is, like we just said in the Mishnah. So too ve'ima labnin. The word liban means to make white, but you can't make it heated up from the fire, making it white. As to the often the tiles litzless ban to roast on them. And the Gemara explains exactly the reason why that would be forbidden to be done. Now, relating to the halacha of the Mishnah, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, as we continue in Beis, he says, Oichle behema. He says that animal food, for example, straw and the leaves of reeds, there's no halachic problem about making a vessel, and hence you're allowed to go ahead and crack them and to fix them, the straw of the stalks on Shabbos, to go ahead and use it to, let's say, like make it into a toothpick. There's no problem about snapping them to break them, because it's animal food, and animal food is food. You're not making a kli out of food. So even if you want to use it, making it as a toothpick, that's okay. Which Rav Kan Rabbi Yehuda wrote to Rabbi Yehuda from the following Beitzah. The Beitzah says, "Metaltlin atze besam." So you're allowed to move this aromatic wood, la riach ben, if you want to use it to smell it, and you could use it lahanas ben lachayl. You could use it to wave for the sick person, which is like the good ear that helps the sick person. And the maila, you could roll it between your fingers to let out a good aroma. Umarich bain, you could smell it, but v'leik temeno, you can't go ahead and crack it and snap it laharich bay, to smell the smell that's going to come out. Meaning, you want to have that the place where you're cracking it will be moist and it will let out a good smell. That you can't do. Why not? So Rashi explains, because it's a gzeira d'Rabbanan that we don't want you to crack it to use as a toothpick. Oh, because there you're making it into a kli, and therefore that would be issa deraisa of tikkun mana, of makar patish. So even though you're not doing it to make a kli, you just want to crack it to smell it, that you can't do. And now them cut, but if you did crack it, it's a pot. You can be exempt because you're not doing it for the purpose of making a kli. Avalasa, but it's forbidden. Again, rabbinically. But if you're doing a lachtas by shina, but let's say you're doing it because you want to get some meat out of your teeth, you want to make a toothpick out of it, or like them, and then you're not crack it. And then cut, if you did crack it, chayv chatas. You may have a chatas on Shabbos, and that's difficult to Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because there are many besamim woods which are animal foods, and still you're telling me that you're going to be chayiv if you're cracking it. Then Rabbi Yehuda say animal food, there's no tikkun mana, there's no makar patish. So Malay, Rabbi Yehuda said to him, he says, you got a good question. He says, hashta now, pater aval asr kakashali. And as Rashi explains, in other words, you really had a good question. Had you found the Bryce that would have said that if you're breaking these besamim to use as a toothpick, it would be pater aval asr, it would be exempt, but it would be rabbinically forbidden. Even that would be a difficulty on me, because I said it's mutar lekatchila. I said there's no problem. Now chayav chatas mibayim, for sure. Now you brought me a bread that says yimi chayav chatas. For sure you got a good question on me. But he actually says no. It's actually not a difficulty. You know why? Because elikitanya, when did we learn that brisa is bekashin? We're talking about that those besamim woods are hard, which are not edible for animals. So it's not considered animal food. There you could be chayev for tikkun mana. Says the Gemara, wait a second. kashin, they're hard. Then b'nei malilin, then how you're telling me in the brisa that you could rub them and thereby getting a good smell out of them? They're hard, so you can't rub them. So how are you saying that they're hard? Oh, the word's missing from the brisa. This is what it should say. It should say, "Moilala," you roll it, umariach by, and you could smell it. Again, this is going to be one case. Koitma, you could crack it, umariach by, and you could smell it. Yes, even like a tchila. And even if you're going to do it to make a toothpick out of it, it's going to be permitted, because that's like Rav Yehuda. Because when it's moist and it's animal food, there's no tikkun mana. We only said the norm, which is because it's not the norm by a moist one to make into a toothpick. But the truth is, you could even make it, like Rashi is explaining, even into a toothpick, because when it's moist, it's animal food, and animal food there's no halach of tikkun mana. So we just said mariach by, to smell it, because that's just the norm. Oh, but when we say this, and these are the words that are missing, so when we said moilin, it was on this case of the moist ones. When it's moist, and that's like Rabbi Yehuda who says, yeah, there's no tikkun mana on that because it's animal food. But kashin, that's what the Bryce was continuing. But when it's hard, that's what the Bryce was saying, like the many not snap it. If you did snap it, because again you're doing it not to, you just want to smell it. So then it would be patav alaser. If you want to use it as a toothpick, then you're not allowed to snap it. If you did, again, this is different. That's not difficult in Rabbi Yehuda because that's when it's hard. Now the Gemara actually brings a stira on this halacha. Tanachada, we learned in one brayso, kait mayu merichba. You could take these aromatic wood, you could crack it, and you could smell it. Tanid you learned another brayso, like to men like, but you know, snap it to smell it. So Amar Reb Zera, Amar Reb Chizah, like that's not difficulty. The brayso says that you're allowed to is berachin when it's soft, which like Rabbi Yehuda said, when it's soft, it's fine, it's animal food, and there's no tikkun kli. But kashan, the one that says you're not allowed to, is when it's hard. And when it's hard, again, we said then it's going to be us. Now, Maskala Rav Acha Bayakvi says, I don't understand. He says, Bakashan, amai loy. He says, why, when it's hard, you said you can't snap it to smell it, and you told me why, because it's like Zera D'Rabbanan, that even though you're not intending to make it a kli, that, if you would, it would be Issa D'Oraisa of tikkun mana of making a toothpick. But Maishna Mahadit Nan, why is it different than what we learned in Masech Shabbos? Mishnah says, a person could break a barrel, and this is where this sugi is where all the bottle cap and there's all over here in this sugi over here about breaking open, making a kli. So the halach is that you're allowed to break a barrel, which is a lid that has inside the barrel some dried figs. You're allowed to break it open lechem and gregers, to eat from it dried figs. As long as you're not intending to beautify when you're cracking it open to make an opening, last is kli to make a vessel that it should be as a vessel. As long as you're not intending to, it's going to be permitted to break it open. So you see, we're not geyser ein miskaven not miskaven. So ba'id more, but the Gemara has another question. Harava baravada, baravin baravada, the Amr Tavai, both of them say, Kevin be Rabbi Yehuda, when we buy the house of Rabbi Yehuda, who we were just discussing before, have a mefashach. So he would cut with his hands the branches from a large piece of wood, for us, from a detached piece of wood. The Yovlon alvasa. He would give us these large sticks, afagav, even though it's hard, the chazil lekasasa denarge, that was fit to make a handle for a hatchet, for an axe, vechatzini, and as a pick, and still he would break it, so we could use it to smell. I thought you told me that with geyser, if it's hard wood, even though you're doing it to smell, with geyser ought to, when you might make it, use it for something like a pick or an axe, which it was usable for. Says the Gemara, Lekash, not difficult. This that we said that it's usher when it's hard, even if you're doing it for smelling because we were geyser, is Rebbe Lazar, that he is geyser. That's who we were going like before. This that we're saying that we found that Rabbi Yehuda himself was mefashach, that he would break these hard woods to smell it, and we weren't geyser, is Rabbanan. It's machlekes tanoim. The Tanya, like we learned in the Brisa. The Brisa says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, he says, a person could take a splinter in front of him, Lachtas Beishinov, the first machlek is not what we're discussing, it's the second part. He says you could take a splinter from under you, Lachtas Beishinov, to use as a toothpick. The sages, and this is actually the chacham that we mentioned in Rashi in the Mishnah to show that the chacham disagree with Rabbi Eliezer. They say no, Leitol, you can't take even in front of you, like we said, you can't take a splinter to use as a toothpick. Only from the trough of animals, which is something that's fit to be eaten. That was prepared for all purposes. But wood, since it's normally used for a davar aser, like to make a keli out of it, it was only permitted to move it only for fuel to heat up an oven, but you can't use it for something else like making a toothpick. Okay, now the Shavin, they all agree, shaleik temeno, and this is going on the splinter. You can't crack it, you can't snap it. And what we want is this next machlekes. Okay, so everyone agrees now I'll snap it. But vim katmoy, let's say you did snap it, lachzis by shinov, to go ahead and use it as a toothpick, or by adel, so to use it to make as a pick, to open up a door. We have a machlekes. And this machlekes is critical to understand what we just mentioned before. If a geyser snapping the hard wood to smell it, atu, if you want to make a kli out of it, like to make a toothpick. If you went and you snapped this wood to use as a toothpick or to open up a door, so b'shaygig b'Shabbos, if you did it by mistake on Shabbos, chayav chat, b'mezid, b'yamtiv, if you did it b'mezid, even on yamtiv, sevigas arbon, to Rabbi Eliezer, you'd get 40 lashes. So we see according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's an issa deraisa. They say no, echad zeh with the Shabbos and yamtiv, ein ela mishum shvus. No, it's only rabbinically forbidden, because as Rashi explains, this ketima, this snapping of the wood, although it's tikkun mana, you're making a pick, you're making a toothpick, but it's kalacha, yeah, it's an indirect way, and it's not a bona fide tikkun. Only, like Rashi says, if you cut it and you smooth it with a knife. Oh, so we have this machlekes. Now the Gemara goes back to answer the original question. That we had a bryce that says that by the hardwood you're not allowed to go ahead and cut it, you're not snap it even to smell it. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Eliezer the Kama Hasam. Rabbi Eliezer, it says over there that by cutting a hard wood, if you're using, let's say, for a toothpick, which is to make it into kli, chayev chata should be chayev chata is a deraisa. Oh, so here when you're using it to snap it to smell it, so you'll go down one level. It'll be pater, but it's going to be forbidden rabbinically because you might make it into a kli, which was that bryce that says it's going to be aser because it's a deraisa. Rev Yehuda, that would be mafashach lahariach, that he actually would crack it himself to smell it, the hard wood, is Rabban and the Ka'amri Hasan Rabban that say over there. When you're snapping it to make a kli out of it, let's say to make a toothpick or a door pick, pat aval aser, it's only rabbinically forbidden and you're biblically exempt. Oh, so here when you're doing it to smell, we're not going to make a gzera. The whole issue of making the wood itself for a pick is a derabanan. So when you're doing it to smell, which is not even to make a kli, is going to be even initially permitted, and therefore that's the resolution of those two brises. Are you allowed to cut the wood to smell it or not? It is a machlekes tanoim between Rabban and Rabbi Eliezer, like we see if they hold it is deraisa derabanan. When you're doing it for a kli, so when you're doing lahariach, is going to be machlekes if it's going to be as derabanan or even mutter like a tchila. But says the Gemara, Leslie, Rabbi Eliezer doesn't Rabbi Eliezer hold of the Mishnah that we quoted before that says, and again, Rabbi Eliezer is saying it's forbidden to break open a wood, even just to smell it, even if you're not doing it to size, to make it like a kli out of it. The Mishnah, however, said as a person could go ahead and break the barrel, lechem and egregious. You want to eat a dried fig that's inside of it. So you can make a hole, you could break open the barrel, as long as you didn't intend to make a vessel out of it. So as Rashi explains over here, that if you intend to make a kli, it's a chiv deraisa. When you don't intend to, we see that the Rabbanan are not geyser like a tchila. So even if Rabbi Eliezer holds that it's a deraisa to take a hard piece of wood and make a toothpick out of it, but even so, why is the Rabbi saying if you're cracking it to smell it's going to be asur derabanan, and we're saying that's Rabbi Eliezer? The other one says mutar is derabanan. It shouldn't even be asur derabanan. Why is it different than when you're making a hole in the barrel, which if you did it with the intention of making a kli would be issa deraisa, and that's why the whole thing with the plastic bottle caster is if it's going to the garbage, if it's not meant to be, it depends on what intention is. You see, we're not geyser. So Rav Ashi, and this one word of the Gemara is a much discussion. He says, Kitan Yahi, when did we learn that Beitzah says it's going to be permitted by the barrel, is b'mustaki. The way Rashi explains it is, it's a broken barrel that you attach the broken pieces with some type of a resin, which you make tar from. It smells like the smell of frankincense. And what they would do is they would take a broken piece of earthenware and they attach it together. So since it's shaky, that's the whole thing about a bag or whatever, about something that's not a sturdy thing. So there's no gezer over there that we shouldn't think he's going to make a kli out of it. And again, there's a lot of discussion. We're showing exactly what is this mustaki, but that's the big discussion about opening up barrels or bottles and caps about. But the way Rashi says it, mustaki is some type of a flimsy thing. That's what they talk about, like opening up a snack bag or whatever. Something that's a flimsy, so we don't make it the gezerah over there, and therefore that's why it's going to be mutter. But if it's something like the case of Rabbi Eliezer, when you have a hard thing like a regular piece of wood, that if you cracked it for the purpose of making a toothpick, it would be Issa Deraisa, then we are going to Issa Rabbanan, and we say that's going to be forbidden to go ahead and even just to smell it. Rabbi Eliezer holds it's going to be usher. He would agree to the halach of the barrel because that's mustaki, that broken pieces together, and wasn't one entity, it was put together, and because of that, breaking that back open again together is going to be mutter even like a tchila, and not going to make even Issa Rabbanan. Said in the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer said that you can gather the straw from the courtyard and you could use it to light. So Gemara brings a brisa that elaborates. We learned in the brisa, Megavim min achatzer, you could gather from a courtyard or madlik and you could light those twigs. And this is Shittas Rabbi Eliezer, not like Rabbanan. Whatever's in the courtyard is considered prepared. And as long as you don't make piles out of it. Rabbi Shimon says it's permitted. The Gemara says, what's their machlekes about? So the Gemara says, Marsa of the Tanakama held Mechzid de Komachnef Lamachol Yamachrin. It looks like you're gathering for tomorrow and the day after, like it looks like you're doing for non-Yom Tov purposes. Marsa Rabbi Shimon held no, your pot is proving it. The fact that you're using it right then for your pot, it's obvious that you're not doing it for any other day, and it's going to be permitted. One last halacha, the Mishnah said, you cannot produce a fire, etc. My time, what's the reason that you can't? Which is a famous question. Why people always wonder why in Yom Tiv you have to have a candle to go ahead and light from. Why can't you light a fire? It's even for Echel Nefesh. And this is a unique halacha to that of Yom Tiv. Although you're allowed to do havar, you're allowed to do bishul, you're allowed to do all the different things, but the Isser of Moilid is the Isser. Discussion of exactly what the Isser is, but you know, introduce a new entity that wasn't here beforehand, which creating a new entity of a fire is considered Moilid, and therefore that would be forbidden to be done on Yom Tov. Thank you to any time for hosting.